Kampot isn't on the tourist map yet. This laid-back riverside town in Cambodia has been a well-kept secret among backpacker and expat retirees for years. And I'm finally here to see why. Unlike Cambodia big bucket list destination like Angkor Wat and Phnom Penh, Kampot never rushed to be famous. That's exactly what gives it its magic. Today, we are going beyond the riverfront. I'm taking you on a blow-to-blow adventure up to Bokor National Park. Misty mountains, eerie colonial ruins, and views most other vlogs do not show. So join me as I uncover the real secret of this low-key town of the mountain, river, and salt fields. A hidden gem ready for discovery. I turn to my second more reliable choice of getting myself from Phnom Penh to Kampot, instead of taking a train. That is getting myself a bus ticket off a corner at the backpacker streets. Generally, taking bus transport in Southeast Asia is like opening a blind box. I really do not know what's going to happen. But you just have to believe that everything will fall into place somewhat. First, I actually show up at the ticket booth at the stipulated time. A tuk-tuk appears, ferrying just me across Phnom Penh. I have no idea where this tuk-tuk takes me. Good thing my GPS is on, at least I have a false sense of being in control. At this point, I feel more like a tourist on a city tour of Phnom Penh. Not sure how long is this ride, maybe 20 minutes or so. Until the tuk-tuk stops right in front of what looks like a minivan station. I bought the minivan.
Can I sit in front?
I'm truly commencing the journey to Kampot. The entire journey costs $9 and takes 3 hours to travel the 150 km from Phnom Penh to Kampot. Truth to be told, the journey is not interesting. But halfway through the journey, the minivan stopped at one of the more beautiful rest stops.
This must be the most scenic stopover.
Then we hopped back in, engine started, and finally, after a few more hours on the highway, I reached Kampot. Instead of staying in the usual city center accommodation, I decided to spend my first night at this incredible riverside hideaway. I have seen riverside stay pop out in other people's vlogs, and the moment I arrive in Kampot, I know this has to be my first stop. The only catch, it is about 5 kilometers from the city center. So I hail another tuk-tuk, and for $3, it takes me all the way out to this ulu spot known as the Hideaway. That tuk-tuk ride actually gave me the first impression of Kampot. Kampot feels like a pleasant riverside town, sitting quietly near the mouth of the Gulf of Thailand. Calm, unhurried, and incredibly laid back. The tuk-tuk leaves the main road and head inland, deep into the kampong. And just like that, the tuk-tuk stops. This is the Hideaway.
So, this is my accommodation for tonight.
Oh my, this is the scenery I've been dying to see.
Hi.
Along the river, there are plenty of hotels to choose from, catering to every budget. And the Hideaway is just one of them. My accommodation looks straight out over the river, with the Bokor Mountain range rising quietly in the distance. These are the two places I come to Kampot for. Naturally, I cannot resist. I send my drone up into the air. And then, kaput! Disaster! My drone dropped straight into the river below. I panic, change into my swimming gear, and jump straight into the river to retrieve it. But the water is too milky. I cannot see a thing. All I can do is to watch my drone send out its final death signal from somewhere beneath the surface. That is my $200 mistake. Rest in peace, droney. This river is now your final resting place. And just when I thought the drama was over, while climbing out of the milky river, I almost sank someone else's canoe parked along the riverbank. At this point, I have to call for help, and thankfully, a kind European guest rushed over and helped me pull the canoe back up. Otherwise, I might have to compensate the canoe owner. It's just too much drama for the first hour in Kampot. I spent the next hour in and out of the shower, trying to wash off that milky river water.
So this is my room for the night. Looks like I'm just the only person here.
My skin started itching until I finally scrub off every last bit of it off. As night falls, the riverside turns quiet, almost pitch dark. Out here, there is really nowhere else to go to.
So here's my dinner. A Cambodia beer and a fish burger with salad and cheese.
So dinner happens right here at the hostel cafe. Thankfully, it is a good one. A solid fish burger, and finally, my first taste of the legendary $1 Cambodian beer. I have a couple of beer, settle in, and end up chatting with some Western retirees who make Cambodia their home. A beer or two later, the ice melts. Conversation flow, stories come out, and friendship form. We have those conversations that connotes what happens in Kampot stays in Kampot.
The next day,
It turns out that I have the entire room to myself that night. There are no other guests squeezing in the same dormitory room that night. I set my alarm for first light. A small hopeful thought that maybe, just maybe, my drone may somehow surface after the night. It didn't. After what happened the day before, my mood shifted. Losing my drone definitely takes the wind out of my sails, and I decided not to stay another night in Kampot. Don't get me wrong, this place is fantastic, but I have always believed that things happen for a reason, and sometimes the timing just isn't right. So not today, Kampot. But I will be back. Another time, another chapter. Before leaving, I take one last walk around the riverside accommodation. If you increase your budget a little, staying in a wooden riverside villa here would be incredible. Perhaps next trip, especially with a travel partner. I even had plans to canoe through the palm tree forest, but that would have to wait for another visit.
I've just checked out the hostel, so now I am going into this tuk-tuk, which brings me into the mountains.
I arranged a ride with the same tuk-tuk driver who brought me here yesterday. We struck a deal, $30 for the whole day. And right on time, he is waiting outside the hostel. It is time to go. Bye, Kampot. With the riverside behind me, I start to feel better. Like everything getting a reset, a fresh head, a new adventure. The plan for today is simple. Cover as much of Kampot as I can in the morning. Then get dropped off at the bus station for my next leg of my journey. One tip if you are traveling like this, always be crystal clear with the tuk-tuk driver about where you are going and what you want to do. To be fair, Cambodia tuk-tuk drivers here have been solid and reliable. My next destination, Bokor Hill Station. Bokor Hill Station sits just outside Kampot, about 40 kilometers away. The entrance to Bokor National Park sits right there in front of us. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to reach the park entrance. We cross an old railway line, past an entrance booth. No ticket is required during my visit. And from this point, it is uphill all the way. Bokor Hill, also known as Phnom Bokor, sits at around 1,080 meters above sea level. Coming from almost sea level, walking up or cycling up there would be brutal. Easily over 30 kilometers one way. There isn't much complete information online either, which means I'm figuring this place out as I go, discovering this place in real time. Every now and then, the driver stops, giving the tuk-tuk a break from overheating, and meantime, letting me out to take in the surroundings. Along the way, monkeys lounge casually on the roadside, totally oblivious of the traffic passing them by. It is incredible to see them in semi-natural environment, though they do make the road a little unpredictable. Our first stop is Lok Yeay Mao Monument. The statue is massive, a serene white figure seated on a blue tiered base. Perched on one of the hill's crests and visible for miles on a clear day. When we arrive, people are meditating, leaving offering, and praying as traditional Cambodian music fills the air. With clouds hanging low over the plains and the sea stretching out in the distance, the whole scene feels almost otherworldly. And then, the atmosphere changes. We enter what feels like a concrete wasteland, a ghost town, as they say. Massive construction projects stands abandoned. Entire towns of half-built buildings sits empty. The tuk-tuk now pull up in front of what looks like a half-finished Cambodian temple. This Cambodia temple looks part construction site, part forgotten shrine. Before I can make sense of it, we round a corner and suddenly it appears. The Thansur Sokha Hotel and Casino. An enormous concrete giant sits alone on the mountain. It is impossible to ignore. This casino hotel was reportedly built as part of a multi-million-dollar tourism development aimed at attracting Chinese visitors. Up here, surrounded by fog and forest, it feels completely out of place. Just about 50 meters ahead, there is a Chinese Taoist temple. This Chinese temple, ironically, is more well-maintained than the Cambodia temple and the casino itself. Although during the visit, I am the only person in there. The temple looks well worshipped. We continue on, and on my left, a row of European-style buildings comes into view. These buildings look half occupied, half abandoned. They are eerie, unsettling. I cannot imagine who would choose to live 1,000 meters up a mountain. Through an archway, we arrive at our third stop, Wat Sampov Pram. The tuk-tuk driver parks and tells me to take my own sweet time exploring the temple complex. For the first time, he say, "No rush, just soak in all."
Which looks like
The view here is immediately stunning. I wander through the temples, passing worshippers quietly going through their prayers, and discover smaller shrines tucked in the mist-shrouded mountainside.
beautiful fresco. And the painting as well. So this is where the monk gives blessing to the devotees.
The fog gives the place a surreal, almost mystical atmosphere.
A couple of temples are found within this complex. Let me just go into one of them.
Behind the temple lies a viewing point. That viewing point really takes my breath away. Sweeping plains stretch out below, and the Gulf of Thailand glimmers in the horizon. On a perfect clear day, I am told you might even see Thailand from here. Unfortunately, many of the temple structures appear unfinished, or perhaps abandoned mid-construction, lending the area a quiet, eerie charm. I have been hoping to find a rock perch jutting out of the cliff for the ultimate viewpoint, just like what I see when I Google Bokor National Park. But where I'm standing at, I don't think this is the place yet. Eventually, I hop back on the tuk-tuk. The ride continues, and the cold mountain air brushes across my face. A perfect reminder of the elevation and the adventure that still lies ahead. My fourth stop, Church of Mount Bokor. Seeing an abandoned church right at the distance, I have to stop my driver. He is reluctant to stop here at first, but I insist he make a stop at it. A short flight of steps leads me up to the Catholic church, or what seems like a Catholic church, that is perched alone on the hill. Once part of a French resort complex, the church, abandoned along with the hotel in the 1940s, has stood empty ever since. Today, it's an icon of this area, and the second oldest standing Catholic church in Cambodia. Inside, the walls of the chapel tells a story of quiet devotion and messages left by faithful worshippers. The weather on the mountain is as unpredictable as it is dramatic. One moment, the sky is clear. The next, a veil of mist and the threat of rain swirls around you, adding an almost mystical edge to the scene. So far along this road, I pass by a line of history. I see ruined resorts, the famous abandoned Catholic church, and now what seems like the most iconic French colonial building in Cambodia, the Bokor Hill Station. Built in the 1920s to give the French rulers a cool escape from the Cambodia heat, Bokor Hill Station was exclusively built a hill, a hotel, and resort for colonial elites. Construction comes at a staggering cost of 900 lives due to the remoteness and the inaccessibility of the location at the time. The centerpiece of the hill station must be the Bokor Palace Hotel, completed in the year 1925. By the year 1940, during the First Indochina War, the hotel was abandoned. This hotel was left to decay atop the misty hill. Bokor itself remains largely inaccessible for decades, and even becoming a Khmer Rouge stronghold until the early 1990s. Today, the Palace Hotel shows the wear and tear of unpredictable mountain weather, with shuttered windows and wall weathered by time, much like many of the other buildings along the road. But as I walk around to the back of the hotel, I'm surprised. It is a well-maintained lawn that stretches right before me. Clearly, the Bokor Palace is open for business. And by the way, does it look like the Budapest Hotel from the movie sets from a distance? Not far from here, I spot a cliff in the distance. Is this the cliff I have been looking around for all along? The tuk-tuk driver tells me he cannot go any further. I am a little skeptical, but I tell him if the tuk-tuk stops here, I will walk in myself. I step past the barricade. Beyond it, the road looks like any ordinary quiet lane. But in my head, questions start piling up. Why is there a beautifully maintained French colonial building standing here? Directly opposite one of the most dilapidated houses I've seen so far. The Sherlock Holmes in me takes over. I walk towards the moss-covered, worn-down house. If this weren't broad daylight, There's no way I would go anywhere near it. And sometimes with mist and clouds rolling in, the whole scene feels straight out of Silent Hill. Or like a world after some massive disaster, where only the shell of the building remains. It is one of the most haunting scenes I've seen on this trip, and I noticed something marked on my Google Maps. Just beyond the house. Is it a lookout point? You know me, once I decide to do something, I see it through. By now, I'm completely alone on this stretch of road. A gentle slope separates me from whatever lies ahead. And then, I see a head popping out on the horizon. There is a man sitting down here, motionless, deep in thoughts. That's it. This is the cliff. I stay away from the man and move closer to the rock perch overlooking the edge. Of course, I'm not stupid enough to go right to the edge, for this would be one of the dumbest way to become a statistic. I stop where my instinct tells me is safe. Standing alone there, looking out over the sea far below, I finally understand that man's quiet, pensive moment just 20 meters away. And with great reluctance, I step away from the cliff. I hop back into the tuk-tuk, feeling accomplished after the cliff adventure. The path back down the mountain is exactly the same as the way up. So my camera finally gets a well-deserved rest. Soon enough, I'm back on the same road into Kampot. The bridge spanning the river catches my eye. So beautiful. I just know for sure I'll be back someday to spend more time exploring Kampot. At the end of the bridge, we enter the old town, where the river flows gently on my right. I pass the Seahorse statue, water spouting like Singapore Malayan, a small reminder of the town's charm. The tuk-tuk driver doesn't stop. He zooms past, seemingly oblivious to the stretches of white sand along the riverside. The small river beach calling out repeatedly for me to do a leisure stroll here. I have to hold my horse, resisting the urge to jump off the tuk-tuk and wander. I know myself that I am struggling for time. And of course, from a tuk-tuk driver perspective, he needs to close his day fast. So the tuk-tuk driver heads towards the sea coast, to the final stop of the day, the salt fields. It is totally a unique sight. The last time I saw something like this was over 10 years ago in Bolivia. But this is completely different. These man-made salt fields I'm seeing now are carved out to hold seawater and almost look like a flooded paddy field stretching endlessly towards the horizon. How I wish I still have my drone with me, but no, let's not dwell on that. I hop off the tuk-tuk, roaming through the salt farm like an unleashed horse, where the air is thick with brine. I see workers tirelessly plowing the shallow fields, harvesting salt from the water rather than soil. Against the backdrop of Mount Bokor, the very mountain I climbed earlier, what I'm seeing here now are the fruits, or rather the salt, of human effort. The very grain they toil under the sun will eventually end up on our dining table. Standing here, I feel blessed and humble. Watching them work so hard, I silently vow never to waste a single grain of salt again. It's way past lunch,
and I need to be in Sihanoukville by tonight. After hearing all the horror stories from friends, I definitely do not want to arrive in Sihanoukville after dark. Safety ultimately is first for me. The tuk-tuk takes me back to the old town, eventually dropping me off at the bus station. I put my name on a holding list for the next available bus, leaving my phone number so they can call if a seat open up. But me being me, I cannot just wait. I sneak out of the bus station to have a final look at this charming colonial town. Part of me secretly hopes the bus will be full, giving me an excuse to spend the night here. I walk briskly towards the Seahorse statue, passing one of the most scenic Starbucks I've ever seen. The Starbucks cafe is set in a colonial building overlooking the river and the Seahorse statue. I make a mental note here. Next trip, I'm checking in here, and just 100 meters from the Seahorse statue, my phone rings. Bad news, my bus ticket is confirmed. I have to turn back immediately to the bus station. So close, yet so far from the Seahorse statue. Kampot, I will be back. The minivan takes off. Before I head off, a small reminder, please like and comment to support this channel. And if you are new here, consider subscribing. I'm Uncle Go Traveling, and my next stop is the infamous Sihanoukville. Hope to see you on board the next journey.